What we gonna do for headline?
Cal.
Headlines.
Okay.
Issues That Matter with Calvin Lester and Stephen Jackson on WKSH 97.7 The Heat.
And we are here. We are here. We're here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Calvin Lester. That's Stephen Jackson. It is Tuesday, and today is June 20th, the day after Juneteenth. We hope that you had a great Juneteenth holiday yesterday and a great Juneteenth weekend. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we get started, we always want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. And certainly we thank Brother Johnny Antoine for providing us this excellent opportunity to discuss these issues that matter to you, the people of this area. 97.7 WKSH is a powerful instrument and a powerful tool that we are working really hard to make sure provides you with information that you can be a better citizen, be more articulate in your conversation about these things that are happening in our neighborhood. And we always thank Johnny for being community minded and providing us this platform because, again, you know, I had an opportunity to do a little traveling early in the summer to the state Louisiana bar retreat in Florida. And I can tell you folks, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, there are people that are working really hard to shut us up. And when we have a platform that can discuss the things that we need to talk about, it's really important that we have it. So I thank Johnny for being community minded and giving us this platform. How you doing, Stephen?
Man, I'm doing well, and I agree. We have to make sure that all that we're doing is being done to uplift our community. We have to make sure that we have staples and institutions like radio, community-minded radio, available so that we can speak truth to power. We can make sense of nonsense, and so that we can educate our community. And that's what we do here at 97.7 on Issues That Matter. And Johnny does that throughout the year, 24/7. With what he's doing here with the community radio. So thank you, Johnny, as always, brother.
Yes.
What we got for our headlines? What you got over there?
Well, you know,
I know it's been a while, and so we're gonna see if we're a little rusty.
Well, we're gonna
You
talk
took
about
the whole week off.
No, I was
I
here
took the
early.
whole week off too.
Yeah, well, you know, we were able to get in and talk about the festival.
The festival, yeah.
We're gonna recap the
I
festival.
took all
later.
last week off.
Right.
So I pulled the Black Calvin.
Hey man,
Not Black Tony, Black Calvin.
Hey, get it how you live, baby. Get it how you live. So look, one of the things that I saw that we're dealing with here in Louisiana is this whole, Mayor Arsenault did a state of emergency for the city of Shreveport.
Okay.
And there's this whole scenario about beware of contractors. And so we're going to talk a little bit later in depth about some of the warnings that they gave to the community as it relates to contractors, because, you know, we know that a lot of folks are in a really tough situation and need some help with contractors and removing debris and things of that nature. And, you know, everybody's not on the level, and there are some things that you need to protect yourself from, because there are a group of people out here taking advantage of folks. So we're going to give you some tips that the city has provided or some other folks have provided to make sure that you are not taken advantage of from the contracting situation as you dig out from under this stuff that's going on. What else you got?
Yeah. A little federal news here. A judge has ordered the unsealing of Representative Santos' bond sponsor. This brother has been, I believe, indicted.
Yeah.
He's been indicted.
Right.
He's a congressional representative. You don't know what side of the mouth he's talking out of, or in the band he's talking. Oh, you talking outside of your neck.
Right.
Grandma got the best version anyway, but you know.
Yeah, well, the folks from Texas Southern will say otherwise, but you know.
Oh, Texas Southern? Wow.
That's what they say. That's what they say.
But
we
you
know we're
wouldn't.
the best.
Wow. Well, but you do agree Grandma got the best. Thank you. I'm glad you don't find no disagreements there, Johnny. But a federal judge.
I'm taking a sip of water, but go ahead.
A federal judge denied Representative Santos his latest attempt to keep sealed the identities of people who financially backed his criminal bond. U.S. Judge Joanna Survey, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, appointee of former President Clinton, ordered the names be unsealed at noon on Thursday, giving the bond sureties a window to withdraw beforehand.
Right.
A coalition of media organizations pushed to make the filings public, but Joe Murray Santos, attorneys previously indicated that the embattled congressman would rather be detained ahead of the trial than allow their identities to be sealed. So we have a congressman who does not want people to know who his bond back. So you're the JD in the room.
Yep.
What is the big issue here? Help us. I know we're in headlines, so I'm only going to do one headline. So just real quick, why is he hiding, or what is there to hide?
So
Your bond.
So as a public official,
Okay.
an elected official,
All right.
that there are very few things that you can do
That is not public.
that are not public,
Correct.
particularly if they are directly related to your office.
Correct.
You know,
Absolutely.
we've had since the late 90s, early 2000s, we got on this whole big thing of we want to know everything that elected officials do. We, have to fill out these disclosure things and whatnot. And the idea is that people will know if you're getting financial support, because money talks and BS walks, or as our pastor says, money talks and black folks sometimes don't have a lot to say. And so if you got an elected official that someone is paying for a service for him or her, or doing something like donating to a fund to make sure that this person does not go to jail, then you certainly would want to have knowledge of that, because that person may come up in some legislation, or there may be some favors or some things of that nature. And it's just a bad look for you to be wholly sponsored by somebody else when you're voting on issues. And so,
It could be Jenny Thomas.
it could be Jenny Thomas. It could be, look, man, it could be Hootie James. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is,
Clarence Thomas, tell your wife to go pull her,
Hey,
go,
man.
go get off that bond.
get off that bond. And so, no, it's going to be interesting to see who sponsored it.
What if they unseal it and it's Jenny Thomas?
It's going to be a problem, boy. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be, that will be furniture moving. So, yeah, I again, what always, and I'm going to digress really quickly.
Yeah.
What always made it interesting to me when they started this whole accountability stuff, particularly in the state of Louisiana, is when they put all of these reporting requirements on city councilmen and parish commissioners, people who don't have staff,
Right.
who don't have full-time jobs other than their public service.
Right.
But the full-time folks with the state don't have that same level of scrutiny. It's like, I'm going to make you do what I should do. So I'm focusing on, the parish commissioner in Cocodrie, as opposed to the state representative who's representing the city, the town, the state, and da-da-da-da-da-da. So yeah, I always found it funny that they're making the small elected officials a scapegoat. But in this case, Santos that dude has a lot of problems. He told a lot of lies to a lot of people to get elected. I mean, it's literally, he's doing, what was that movie with Eddie Murphy, The Distinguished Gentleman? I mean, he's
Every
doing
time
that
he
whole,
turn around.
I mean, yeah, Jeff Johnson, good, like them greens. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
What else you got?
Well, speaking on that same, keeping on that same topic, at the end of the legislative session in the Louisiana legislature, they found out that they took the House and Senate voted to strip almost $100 million from Health and Human Services. And the director is saying that $100 million that they're taking out is going to wind up being $500 million because you've got federal matches. And now there's this whole big Republican-owned Republican finger point where everybody's pointing to, you took this and you took that and the whole 9 yards. And it's amazing that at a time where the state has a multi-million-dollar, maybe even billion-dollar surplus, that you wind up taking $100 million from the folks who need the help the most. And that kind of shows you where the Republicans are in our legislature. So, we're getting ready to have some elections really soon. We're going to talk about that a lot coming up. And you need to look at these people and ask them, how did you vote on taking this money from, folks who are vulnerable, who need the social service network at a time where the money is there? So I thought that was interesting. What else?
Very, very interesting. I think, the way they tried to keep it quiet was one of those things. And so, we'll see how that goes. And I also saw where in our legislature, Bossier is now complaining how they got the raw end of the deal in the budget battle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, saying
What
that
they
a
mad
lot of
about?
Bossier projects, and then you also have a state rep up north of town say his projects got stripped out of the budget, and now they're mad at their Republican colleagues for allowing it to happen.
Really?
And what I thought was very interesting, Tanner McGee,
Okay.
who's the number 2 Speaker Pro Tem. There's the Speaker of the House, who is the top person in the House. Then there's
Right.
the Speaker Pro Tem, who's number
Right.
2.
Right.
He's usually the Speaker's lieutenant.
Right.
Who basically went on defense of their position and basically said, how could they have voted against the bill, the House bill, and raising the funding cap and think that they were still going to get projects. And so let me just remind you that Louisiana had about $2 billion, billions with a B,
Right.
$2 billion in surplus money they wanted to spend on large construction projects and
Right.
things back at home.
Right.
Well, what had to happen first was to exceed that state spending cap. They had the legislature had to raise the cap to be able to go over that amount.
Right.
And so you had individuals like Representative Alan Seaball.
Right.
Remember that name because he may come knocking on your door.
Mm-hmm.
Dodie Horton. Remember that name. She may come knocking on your door.
Mm-hmm.
Danny McCormick. Oof, please remember that name.
Yes,
he may
Lord.
come knocking on your door.
For sure.
Particularly if you live in North Highland.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Right.
But we're going to talk about that later, too, because we
Yes.
got some good news out of the Supreme Court.
Right.
But Danny McCormick, these individuals, they voted against raising the spending cap to be able to spend this excess money. And there has been a thing, and you've seen this, Calvin, I've seen this, where they vote against a funding priority, but then they're first in line with the handout to say, where's my project? So you vote against the bill that provides the money.
Right.
We don't need all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We trying to be fiscally conservative.
Right.
Well, what the legislature said was, give me that.
Right.
And here's the bad thing about that, though. The projects don't come to Shreveport. They go somewhere else down south. And that's what I have to tell my colleagues is the projects don't come back home. They go elsewhere when you do foolish and absent-minded stuff like that.
Listen, there's a zero sum in the legislature.
Absolutely. That's what the game is.
That's the game. If I get $1, that means he doesn't.
Right.
What we have to do, and y'all are going to have a chance to do something about that very soon, is send people to the legislature who are not ashamed to ask for the money that Shreveport sends to Baton Rouge.
Vote for Stephen.
Right. Okay. I think, what's this guy's name? Kirby Kelly.
Okay.
Kirby
Man with the
Kelly,
hat.
the man with the hat. I don't know where's what.
Was
Is
he
he
was
still living?
I don't know.
Okay.
Catfish Kirby.
No. That's a different
Chester
guy.
Kelly.
That's Chester Kelly.
Okay.
Kirby Kelly was one of the PI lawyers.
Gotcha.
But Kirby Kelly ran for state representative, and one of the things he did back in the day, in that whole north of town seat, was he showed where all of this money was being raised from Shreveport and Bossier, from taxes, from state sales taxes, and from the casinos, and how very little of it was coming back to Shreveport. I mean, he put it on a graph. We have to stop sending people to Baton Rouge that brag about how little they do.
Right.
There's a reason why there are colleges and universities
Right.
in other parts of the state that are booming, and our institutions are falling on the vine.
Right.
Thank God that we had someone like Greg Tarver, who was in there hanging and swinging for Southern, LSU, the Med Center, and things of that nature. But we have state representatives and folks like that will sit there and
Frown at the money.
will get up and get on other radio stations and talk about how they're spending this money, and you're like, yeah, but while they're bragging on you not spending the money, they taking the money to New Orleans and Monroe and other places.
Right. Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, Louisiana. Listen, we need to get our fair share. And if you are, listen, as a state representative, as a city council person, as a parish commissioner, one of your main school board members.
Don't obligate David.
No. Thank you. You are in the resource development business. That's okay. It needs to be. We need some shade. It's hot. And big part of your job is getting the resources from downtown or the state to your district.
Right.
And if you cannot get those resources to your district, I need somebody who can. And we've got to stop this thing where we are bragging about how little money we bring back. And then, so I don't blame, I'm glad for once they treated them the way they were supposed to.
Exactly.
Because if you don't vote for the money, you shouldn't get it.
Right.
So if you don't want the money, that's fine. I'm gonna send it somewhere else.
And if you're not gonna vote for it,
hey,
if you're not gonna vote for the bill, don't have an expectation,
hey man,
that you're going to get. And so the bill passed, and these guys and girls,
right,
was like, what my project? What our project? Our gone. It's gone.
Man, listen, I read the whole comments about how they were bad mouthing the governor. The governor was like, hey,
y'all did it.
Y'all did that.
Right. Your colleagues with the R behind their name.
Republican colleague. And again, how it's irresponsible, in my humble opinion. If you are a state representative and state senator, you have a bridge that needs to be done in your district.
Right.
The politics of abortion and all of that stuff is of no consequence when it comes down to getting money for my district. So we might argue about this, that, and the third, but when it comes down to spending the money in my district and making sure I have this bridge, I'm voting for whatever I need to vote for to get this bridge money. I tell the story all the time, and it's true. In my second year of law school, I was fortunate enough to clerk for the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus, and in that position, we were given an opportunity to go to the legislature literally every day. We read all the bills. It was a phenomenal experience. Well, what happened was they would be arguing back and forth about abortion and voting rights and all of this other kind of stuff, and there was some characters like Pepe Bruno, who was a very conservative Republican, and Sherman Copeland, who was a very liberal Democrat. Their districts literally are side by side in New Orleans. If you know anything about the New Orleans ship channels, the Huayat people, and then the lower Ninth Ward, they're back to back. They would be arguing tooth and nail until the bill came up to spend some money for New Orleans. And when it came time to spend money for New Orleans, I like to join my friend Pepe Bruno in getting this money for Louisiana. Oh yeah, my friend Sherman Copeland is here to get this money for New Orleans. And I was like, wait a minute. Y'all just finished calling each other no good SOB. He said, yeah, but hey, this is about the money here. Right. And they got the money. And for some reason, our representatives don't understand that your job is to go down there and get money back to Shreveport. So, when you see these people putting these signs all up and down I-49 talking about running for state senator, ask them how much of that state senate money
he's planning to bring back home.
How much has he brought home since he's been a state rep?
Since he's been down there already, right?
Yeah.
Show and prove.
Yeah, because he has a real good track record of voting no against everything. Yeah. So, anyway.
Well, we're going to take a quick break.
Yes.
This is Issues That Matter. You're listening to 97.7. We will play what we want to play and say what we want to say. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you. My bad, Johnny. I should have cued you.
Yeah.
You.
Issues That Matter with Calvin Lester and Stephen Jackson on WKSH 97.7 Dahit.
And we are back. Issues That Matters. We're here. And so we've been talking about just issues that are going on. And so I know we've been out a little bit, and we wanted to catch you up on some very important matters that has taken place in our nation's capital at the Supreme Court. It was a very pivotal week about 2 weeks ago, and it's going to have an effect here in Louisiana, because Louisiana could possibly get its second congressional African-American congressional district, or a congressional district that African-Americans can at least influence the outcome in.
Right.
And so, Calvin, really briefly walk us through the case and what happened and what are the implications on Louisiana.
Okay, I'll give you the
I'll
quick
try
notes.
I'll try to keep you confined.
Thank you.
And so when it's time to go to another section, I'll try to steer you to the other section. Because I know that was a loaded question.
No. It's a lot. It's a lot. So many of you, everyone knows that we on this station, this show, talked a lot about reapportionment last year. A lot. Because reapportionment is important. And so after reapportionment, you have to draw the lines. And the Voting Rights Act of 1965 says that, in so many words, Section 2 says you can draw districts, but you cannot reduce the number of districts, representative districts, that allow African Americans to vote for representatives of their choice. And so when you look at the population and you look at the numbers of folks, Louisiana's population is 1/3 African American. So 1/3 of 6 congressional seats is 2. And so the idea was, based on the Voting Rights Act and Section 2, that Louisiana should have drawn a second African American, a second district where African Americans can vote for the representative of their choice. Not necessarily an African American district, but a district where African Americans voting population can express themselves and choose someone. What does that mean? Is that saying that their votes count more? No. But let's look at our situation in the 4th district. We are the minority. So we can vote, but as a minority, we really don't get to influence the outcome of an election. But if you draw a district that changes the demographics, then African Americans can then have a better opportunity to have someone that represents them. In other words, you don't want to draw a district where, let's say, a Congressman, Mike Johnson, can keep getting elected and never have to come to Galilee, never have to come to Peaceful Rest, never come to the community, because you know what? I don't need to vote for you. Y'all are only 30%. I'm going to campaign to the 70%. I win every time. And so the Voting Rights Act says you got to draw a district so people can express themselves. Well, the legislature listened to that, and they did not. And they didn't do it in Louisiana, didn't do it in Mississippi, didn't do it in Alabama, didn't do it in Georgia, didn't do it in Florida, didn't do it in Texas. All these states were part of this little confederacy situation that are part of the Voting Rights Act. And so in Alabama, they filed a lawsuit that says, hey, you shouldn't be able to do that. Well, at the district court level, the district court agreed with the NAACP that you needed to draw an additional district where African Americans can vote for the person of their choice. The Court of Appeal said, well, let's hold on, because at this point the election's going on. So we ran the 2022 election under basically a bad plan.
Right.
And so now the Supreme Court has said, you know what? The folks in Alabama are right. The Voting Rights Act, even though we've hurt it, it's still the law. Section 2 is still the law. And so, you know what? You actually have to draw a second district. And so Alabama is now under the requirement to draw a second district where African Americans can vote the person of their choice. Well, Louisiana has the exact same situation. I think Alabama, their African American the percentage of African American in Alabama may be 35% or 33 or something of that nature, but it's clearly a third, just like it is in Louisiana, just like it is in Mississippi. So they're going to have to draw an additional district. So that puts a whole number of scenarios in play. We'll talk about those scenarios later, but there's going to have to be another district drawn. That's at the congressional level. Well, there was a lot of conversation about the districts that we are concerned about in terms of state representatives and state senate. Caddo Parish is majority African American, and so when you look at the numbers of state representatives, instead of having districts 2, 3, and 4, the demographics will say you should probably have 2, 3, 4, and a new 5th, reconfigured House District 5 that is more African American. Now, as a side note, and I'm not throwing this shade at anybody in particular, but this is a fact. In 2010, there was a plan to draw that additional district, and a certain state representative who at the time represented House District 3 voted against that plan that would have created another minority seat. I will let you determine who she is.
What she keep doing?
Well, she does a parade in February, and I'll let you do the math. But that's not a slam. That's an actual vote. So had that person voted,
Public record is what he's saying.
it's a public record. And so that person voted against having an additional African American state representative. And so we don't have it. Well, there's an opportunity to get it now. And as a matter of fact, we can even go so far as, I want to say Senate District is at 38 or 37 that used to be represented by Milkovich. That district already is about 30-some% African American. There was a plan that would have made that district about 55% African American, creating another African American Senate district. So, these are very weighty and very important deals, because you're talking about power. You're talking about power, political influence that decides. We just finished talking about the money. And so having more people who you can choose to impact how you get resources is huge. And so that's kind of what's going on with that case. At some point, I suspect the legislature is probably going to have to be put back in session, a special session to draw these districts. I mean, you're talking about the congressional district. You got potential to draw. I don't know if they got if there's a possibility of drawing another Public Service Commission district. That might be tighter, but I think there's a potential of redrawing the Bessie Board, which is the Board of Secondary Education, because they have 6.
Right. You have to look at all of these things.
Yeah.
I understand that there should be at least 6, maybe possibly 6 new House seats.
Right.
And at least 3 new state Senate seats. And for folks who don't understand the implications of this, Louisiana House of Representatives right now sits at a supermajority.
Correct.
When it comes to Republican domination. Right. And so we are woefully underrepresented in the legislature. The legislature is what determines what curriculum you will study.
Right.
Although Bessie is the state school board, they tell Bessie, here is the curriculum that you will study.
Correct.
They're the ones that appropriate the monies for the medical schools. Right. They're the ones that will they
appropriate the money for the schools, the minimum MFP.
MFP for your public schools. They're the ones that's going to give your teachers their pay raises and things of that nature.
Right.
So it's important to have representation there at all levels, and we don't have that right now. What the Supreme Court basically said to Alabama is, hey, Alabama, your African-American population is 25%. Watch the math. Your African-American population is 25%. And your representation in Congress doesn't reflect 25% of the seats that you have. So in Louisiana, the African-American population is 33.
That's right.
It's higher. And I don't know if you talked about this. I was responding to an email.
Go ahead.
But the African American population in Louisiana is higher, so we're more underrepresented in Congress than the folks in Alabama.
Wow.
And what you have is you have some of these folks who back this bad plan, basically saying, well, you know, the dynamics are different in the case. You doggone Skippy, it is.
Right.
It's definitely different. It's more egregious in Louisiana than it is in Alabama.
Right.
Because we should have at least 2 congressional members, and some would argue we may have more.
I mean, 1/3, 1/6,
Right.
is 2.
It's 2.
Yeah.
So, but then some people would say with the 33-35%, we should have 2 black districts and at least 1 that can influence
Right.
the outcome, a sort of toss-up seat.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have congressional seats now where they call the race at polls close at 8. They call the race at 8:15.
Yeah.
You know, it blew out.
Yeah.
Ain't no way they gonna catch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. But Bessie, I think they got to go and look at the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I think they got to look at some of these district judgeships.
Yes.
You know,
Everything is back on the table.
everything should be on the table. Now, what I am curious to see is, will the Supreme Court split hairs? Are they going to say, well, you know, we said this for Alabama, but we meant this,
Nah.
you know,
I mean, I think
because they are separate cases.
they are separate cases. However, the basis of all of those cases is Section 2. And if Section 2 means what Section 2 means, which means you cannot draw less, you can draw more representation, but you can't draw less. And if Alabama's at 25% and we're at a third, and they're getting an extra seat, then they gotta come to a cross.
And let's be clear, what's at stake with the Section 2 also is what the court is saying. Do you all have to come to the court? That's part of that, right? Is do you all who determines that test?
Right.
Does the courts determine that?
Right.
Or is it Congress? Who is the?
Right.
They recently said the Justice Department was not it.
Right. I mean, because, and I haven't read the Voting Rights Act.
And I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
The Holder, Shelby versus Holder.
Yeah, they took out, because it used to be this thing called pre-clearance, that before you adopted any plan, you would have to pre-clear that plan with the Justice Department to make sure that you didn't do what Louisiana did, which was draw less than they were supposed to.
Which was states that had a history
Yes.
of racial
Yes.
segregation and discrimination. Basically,
also known as the Confederate
I was about to
States.
say the Confederate States.
Right.
And that was part of the agreement
That was part of the agreement.
of them coming back. What was that succession?
I mean,
but that was civil rights.
That was civil rights, but the fact of the matter is the problems that you have with the Voting Rights Act and the places where you needed the Voting Rights Act are the places where you had the secession and the Confederate States.
Right.
I mean, they didn't say it, but when you list them, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Georgia,
Texas
Florida,
loud.
Texas.
Y'all think y'all go to Dallas and y'all off the plantation?
Yeah, no, bro. Texas. No matter how much you hang in the 5th Ward and the 3rd Ward in Houston, Texas is still Texas, baby.
You still in Texas.
You still in the South. They still had slaves.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with, and so it's really vitally important that we deal with that and we keep our eye on. So look, we're gonna take a real quick break. After this break, we're gonna come back and talk about what we saw at Juneteenth, how we can improve it, and some of the things we dealt with. So listen, you're listening to WKSH, Issues That Matter, 97.7 WKSH. We play what we want to play and say what we want to say. Stick and stay on the other side of the break.
To shine.
Issues That Matter with Calvin Lester and Stephen Jackson on WKSH 97.7 The Heat.
And we are back. And we thank you for your attention. If you want to call in and get some of this and get some off your chest, there are a number of ways you can do that. If you're watching on Beyonce's Internet, of course, you can always send us a message in the chat, or you can give us a call on the hotline. That number is 779-0459, 779-0459. We'd love to hear from you. Well, this past weekend was Juneteenth. We had the Juneteenth Let the Good Times Roll Festival. We had a number of different events, and I was let me put on my Royal Megan Friends hat. On behalf of Royal Megan Friends, I really want to thank Shreveport, Bossier, Northwest Louisiana, East Texas, the whole Arklatex, or as Cat Dave said, Arklatex, for coming out to support the festival. We've had over 36 years, some of everything that has happened that could happen. In the 90s, we had a deal where it was either Friday or Saturday. There literally was a tornado that came through the festival. Yeah, that's right. Y'all on stage, wasn't it? Yeah, and the tornado. This was when it was out there in the parking lot before they built the Festival Plaza, before they built where that garage is for the boat. And so we had that. People got hurt. We were running in the whole 9 yards. This year, did a little something different. Bought a bigger name artist, for lack of a better term. A number of people were concerned. Well, why was Lil Boosie on Sunday night versus Saturday night? Well, as I was just saying before, our plan was to have him on Saturday night, but by the time we got all of the details together, he already had a date. So, you went with what you had, and of course, you had his legal situation, who nobody was looking forward to and could have figured out that it happened or knew it was going to happen. And while I'm on that, let me say this, man. Listen, Shreveport, y'all, we got to do better than this. It's like some people were almost cheering the fact that the man got arrested and he was not. It was looking like he wasn't going to make it to the festival. Like y'all, I don't know. It's like y'all were rooting against the festival or so negative. Like, see there, I told you. It's like, dude, if you were coming to the concert, come to the concert. If you wasn't going to come, don't come. But for you to jump out all, now everybody's a lawyer. Now everybody wants to talk about bail and bond and da-da-da-da-da. Well, he can't get this. Well, guess what? Boosie is free. He got his bond. He's out. Now, that's not good for us for the festival. And you know what? Y'all might see Boosie back in Shreveport sooner than you know. And I'm going to leave that where it is. But the fact of the matter is there were a number of challenges that we had to deal with. And I want to thank, and I've told him this at the wrap-up meeting last night, Vincent Holmes, Henri Wesley, Ken Thomas, that whole inner group of brothers that are working on this festival all of the time, that you don't see all of the time, really worked hard to give this community a festival that you can be proud of. And I really do appreciate it, and we really do appreciate the fact that, Friday was tough because the storms and a lot of people were out power. Saturday, a lot of people were still without power, but Sunday, Shreveport Bossier, the community came out to support the festival. And y'all got to see the reason why we do it. A lot of folks got to see the lamplighters, and that at the end of the day, the money that we raise goes into programming for their scholarships to help them in their journeys toward college. And so I just want to thank you, everybody that bought a ticket, everybody that said something positive, everybody that, I want to thank the vendors that came out. They made money, but they also supported the festival. So I think it was a good time that was had by all. Are there some things that we could have done better? Or obviously, there's some things that you could have done better. But given what we had to deal with, this was one of the most challenging festivals I think ever. And so, from that perspective, we are thankful that Shreveport supported us, and we're looking forward to making it even better, bigger and better next year. What were your comments about if the festival or the whole weekend?
Yeah, and thank you to the sponsors.
Yes.
Because they were, a lot of people can do these things. And I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw something else that the parish was sponsoring. I said, man, this logo is popping up everywhere.
Right.
Because we're doing a lot of stuff. First time, I think, most money that y'all have ever gotten from the parish this year.
And it made a huge difference in our ability to give higher level entertainment.
Right. Here's what I'll say. Just my take from a currently elected official, public capacity, is that we're going to have to be open to doing some things different. And what I have consistently said is that doesn't mean that you have to undermine what's already being done. That's not what different means. But doing some things different, because as Juneteenth becomes a more popular holiday, and I want to talk about that in a minute too, as Juneteenth becomes a more popular holiday, you're going to have people who are going to want to do more, who are going to want to plan more. It's no way to get around it. That's like saying, the Nutcracker is going to be the only production. The Strand Theater is going to have one production of the Nutcracker in town. And if Yazzie, if y'all think about doing it, you're wrong. We don't do that during Christmas.
Right.
If we say KTBS, y'all the only one popping fireworks and doing a firework display on the 4th of July, and nobody else, you're wrong. That's not what we do. And so as Juneteenth becomes a more accepted holiday and a more widespread celebrated holiday, the artists are going to become harder to get.
Right.
The vendors, they're going to be hard because they're going to be dedicated to do, because everybody has a Juneteenth festival.
Right.
Let's be real. Everybody has a 4th of July festival.
Right.
And so I think, what the parish and the city is doing as public bodies, we're stepping up saying, we want to be creative. I think we have the longest running festival, Juneteenth festival here.
Yes.
But we also understand that, there is an age group that, you got an age group that didn't grow up outside. They grew up playing a Nintendo game. And is it government's job for us to get in the middle of, where you go? I've always said it's not our job to pick winners and losers.
No.
It's our job to give everybody an equal opportunity to be successful.
Right.
And you go out and do what you have to do, but we're not going to do it in a way that undermines the other person. And that's always been my position. And I don't budge from it.
Right.
Given any circumstances, I don't budge off of it. And so that's what we did. I went by I went by Ardish. My flight was delayed getting in due to the storms, but I didn't get a chance to go by the farmers market. I talked to the guy over the Revel. They're excited about being there. They used to shut down.
Right.
When the festival used to come in for the farmers market. Now they see the benefit of keeping it open.
Right.
There was I think a bike ride that morning or something.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many things, and what I tell people is I like the idea of having options to choose from when I'm trying to go to different things. Right. Because when you go to Essence Festival in a couple weeks, you're going to have to choose, do I want to go to the concert at the Superdome? Right. Do I want to go to the after party at Murrow's place?
Right.
Where do I want to go? Do I want to go to one of these day parties? It's so much going on. There's so much activity going on.
Right.
But what anchors it is the Essence Festival.
Correct.
That's the anchor for everything. Yeah. And
the
all
main
of the
thing is the main thing.
It's the main thing.
Right.
And so what I also want to encourage us to do is we have to figure out how we want Juneteenth celebrated.
Right.
Because what I find interesting is when people don't do a Juneteenth sale and people don't have Juneteenth commercials running and people don't have Juneteenth billboards, we sit back and we fold our arms up and say nobody's accepting our holiday.
Right.
But then when we see Caucasians and Mexicans show up to the Juneteenth festival,
right,
we're looking at them like, what you doing here?
Right. No,
what do you want?
No,
do you want people to celebrate the holiday, or do you want them to sit at home? Because nobody gets upset when black folks celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Nobody's upset when What would happen if I showed up on the riverfront for the 4th of July and our brothers and sisters of another persuasion say, well, what you doing here?
Right.
That's not what we should do. And I see
Or
a
you
lot
show
of
up
that.
at St. Patrick's Day.
Or St. Patrick's Day and the Irish. What are you?
Right.
They don't do that. And we do that during Juneteenth. I see it more and more during Juneteenth.
Yeah, I think part of all of this, and you're absolutely right, is that we're gonna have to be big boys and big girls about, what this holiday is and what it isn't. I think if we always keep the main thing in terms of what Juneteenth is really about, a celebration of African American culture, a time where we can both reflect on where we've been and where we need to go. I like the idea of having other things around the festival, because I think a rising tide lifts all boats. I do. I just think what we have to do is come to the table and work collaboratively and not undermine each other.
And that's been,
and you have been
that has
consistent.
been my role.
You
in
have
this
been
process.
consistent, when that's what it's about.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, Juneteenth doesn't belong to anybody.
Right.
And we need to celebrate it accordingly.
And we need to celebrate it so that those who fought to have this holiday recognized can continue for those
Correct.
who are coming, because there's an attack on diversity, equity, and
Lord.
inclusion. There's an attack on
Absolutely.
culture right now.
That's right. I mean, it wasn't, I think it was either Juneteenth or very shortly before Juneteenth that Governor Abbott in Texas signed that diversity stuff. Right. And let me say this. If I had a son who's going to college, because my son is in college now, ain't no way I would send any of my African American college athletes to any of those schools in Texas. That ain't Texas Southern or Prairie View. They tell you they don't want your diversity in the classroom, but they love to have your diversity on the football field, on the basketball court, running fast and jumping high. Well, hey, let's do it like this. If you want to go to
because it's a reason why we run fast and jump high.
Right. Man, let's not even get in that. But
I got to go in the morning. I got to be there in the morning. Don't get me.
Right. So we got to do better. But no, I think Juneteenth is something that everyone can celebrate. I know it is. I know that we're having some growing pains.
Right.
I know that in another life, million years ago, I did something that was unusual. I gave a pot of money to a group of African American artist groups that never had that level of funding before. And at the beginning, it was like a Pier 6 brawl, and I was giving them resources. And it wasn't until maybe like 3 years after they realized that the money was still coming that everybody was able to calm down and start to work together. So you're right. We have to go from a position of strength and not a position of lack and move forward. So listen, we thank you for your attention this evening. This has been Issues That Matter. I'm Calvin Lester.
Stay cool out there. Let me before we close it out,
Please.
let me thank all of our frontline and essential workers, myself included.
Right.
Because I've been out there first responding, knocking on doors, passing out ice. And I don't mean to be selfish about that, but let me thank all of those men and women who are up on those utility poles, serving. The life that was lost by the young man, 35 years old, trying to help get our power restored.
That's right.
And so we are so thankful for our community. Be patient. This is going to be a long process. This was an EF1 tornado, and we're still at the beginning of hurricane season. So just be mindful, be patient. Help is on the way.
Right.
And we're trying to get some things there. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that's out there serving, and our prayers are with those that are still in the heat bearing this, but we're working day and night to try to take care of it.
That's right. And I echo that. Blessings, and we'll see y'all Thursday.